over 2,000 miles through the heartland of America, from its headwaters in Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. This river is the watershed for 32 states, and we are impacting it with our actions. The litter that we produce from coffee cups to masks or plastic bags can end up in the environment, making their way to our rivers and then into the oceans. Globally, this results in about a dump truck's worth of plastic entering our ocean every minute. The Mississippi River drains 40% of the continental United States, creating a conduit for our litter to reach the Gulf of Mexico. In September 2018, the mayors of the Mississippi River made a commitment to reduce plastic waste in the Mississippi River Valley. To support that commitment, the Mississippi River Plastic Pollution Initiative is working with volunteer citizen scientists, local communities, associations, and researchers to collect data to understand the magnitude of the plastics problem along the Mississippi River. Scientists need data on what's ending up in the environment so that we can use that information to address this important environmental problem. And you can be a part of the solution. Download the free Marine Debris Tracker app and choose the list entitled MRCTI to collect data on what plastic pollution looks like in your community. The data will be analyzed to help us understand the problem, which then leads to solutions that will help policymakers, businesses, and citizens alike take action. Join us today to ensure a clean river and clean seas for all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenna Jambeck. I am a professor of environmental engineering at the University of Georgia and a National Geographic Fellow. Welcome to the second webinar of the Mississippi River Plastic Pollution Initiative. This initiative is led by the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative, or MRCTI, which are the mayors along the Mississippi, the United Nations North America, United Nations Environment Program, North America, National Geographic Society, and us at the University of Georgia. We're working with you, our community members along the Mississippi, to generate a snapshot of plastic pollution along the river. You play a very important role in this as collaborators using a tool, a mobile app called Debris Tracker, to help us collect this data. So what we're going to start off with is Catherine Youngblood, who's our Citizen Science Director, is going to give you some more information and training on the app and how to use it and how it sort of fits into this project. If you have question and answers, please drop them into the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. And I will try to answer some maybe as she's speaking, but we'll take about 10 minutes to answer questions directly after Catherine's done speaking. And then after that, we're really excited to have 3 local representatives to talk from our pilot cities, which are Baton Rouge, St. Louis, and St. Paul, Minnesota. So we'll get to hear from all of them and then continue to take question and answer both in the chat and live for the remaining time. Catherine.
Thank you, Jenna. We're really excited. If you've been in one of these sessions before, the first 30 minutes will sound really familiar, but we're very excited to have voices from our local cities today to get to hear more about what plastic pollution looks like on the ground in each of those places. But first, I will kick it off with sorry, let me get my screen sharing set up here. All right. So first we'll go through Debris Tracker and what that means and how we're going to be using it as a tool along the Mississippi River. Alrighty, so Debris Tracker was founded in 2010 in partnership with NOAA and the University of Georgia, and we're now powered by Morgan Stanley and also in partnership with National Geographic. So the app is a geospatial tool used to collect data on litter items. So it's very robust scientific data on exactly where litter items are in different parts of the world. So we'll go over a couple different sections: what is Debris Tracker, how we use the app, how data collection works with the app, and then some suggested surveying protocols for this project. All of this information is available on debristracker.org/Mississippi in our Citizen Science Field Guide. So all of this is written down if you'd like to reference it. And we'll start with what Debris Tracker is. So like I said, the app is designed to collect geospatial data on litter. So every time you add an item in the app, it's creating a unique data point of where that item is, when you found it, and what type of item it is. And so that's a really robust data set that allows us to look for upstream solutions to plastic pollution. So it's really helping to create this bigger picture of what plastic pollution looks like in different places around the world. We've made some progress towards creating that bigger picture so far. We have over 3 million items tracked in over 90 different countries around the world. But a lot of that data is really focused on coastal areas in the past. And so we're really excited that this Mississippi River initiative will allow us to look upstream at how litter is traveling from our communities into the ocean. So this is a really unique and innovative initiative to look at litter closer to the source from where it's starting. So all data logged on the app is publicly available on our database, and this is available at debristracker.org/data, so you can explore your own data and also look at data from citizen scientists around the world. And this data can be used for research, for and for education, for advocacy, for really anything. We believe that by creating it and making it open data, that it really allows people to work together to find more solutions. And so the method we're going to talk about today is derived from a method we developed as part of our National Geographic Sea to Source expedition. So that happened along the Ganges River in India and Bangladesh in 2019. And you can see pictured here some of the transects of data we collected as part of that expedition. And the goal of this method, which is the same goal for the Mississippi project here, is to really understand what is there, what kind of litter is there, how it got there, and then really address that question of what can we do about it. So let's jump in to how to actually use the app. So if you're familiar with Debris Tracker, if you have it downloaded on your phone, this will look a little different than what you're used to. We're actually in the process of a pretty major app update in partnership with National Geographic and Morgan Stanley. So we're really excited to launch this new update that I think will make the app a lot easier to use and have a more clean flow for people to experience. So let me play this screen recording and I will show you what it looks like. So when you log into the app, when you're logged in, you'll see an option to pick a list. So we host these customized lists for people. They have different items based on what people are actually seeing in their local environments. They're also in different languages. So the list for this project is the MRCTI list, which we're still adapting based on feedback from local partners on what they're actually seeing on the ground. But you can see it has a list of litter items that are organized by categories, so you can collapse those categories to find what you're normally seeing. You can also search for particular items, and then once you find an item, you can click add. You can see here it's waiting for GPS signal, so I was actually doing this screen recording in my house, so my GPS signal wasn't great. But normally it takes a few seconds after you open the app for it to figure out where you are. I also recommend, if you're having trouble with the GPS signal, to keep your Maps app open so you can refresh your location. But you'll see you can change the number of items, and then you can also click on the icon to add a description, which for this project in particular, we're asking that people add descriptions when they can identify the brand name of the item. I think this will be a really great way to be able to bring more people into the conversation on what kinds of plastic pollution we're finding on the ground. So yeah, you can type in the description of what the brand name of the item that you're seeing, and then when you click add, you'll see it add into the manage items section, so you'll know that it went through as soon as the GPS signal works. There we go. And so then you know that that item added into the section. And then as well, if you find items that are not included in the list, you can also use this other section and then type in a description of what you actually found. So, for example, if you find some really obscure litter item, we might not have it listed here. You can include a description there so that we can see what type of item that was. So that's sort of a catch-all for all of the other items. And then once you're done, you can click manage items. So This will allow you to see the map of where you actually collected data. You can also get rid of items if you accidentally log something, so you can click that X button to get rid of stuff. And then when you're ready, you can click continue. Well, there's also a settings option where you can change the distance as well as select a project, which we'll talk more about later. But when you click continue, there'll be a survey that automatically pops up. It'll ask you some questions about what survey protocol you were using, a couple different questions that will help us to analyze this data and be able to compare across different places and different ways people are collecting data, including land use, where you collected the debris. And there's also a spot for general observation. So if you found something really interesting, if you have observations about where you think that litter is coming from, there's spaces to include that information and share that with us as well. You can also upload images, so you can take pictures of debris items. We recommend taking pictures maybe at the beginning and end of your transect, taking pictures of anything interesting you see. And then when you're ready, you can upload the session. So uploading the session submits it to our open access database. If you don't have Wi-Fi access for whatever reason, you can choose that upload. Let me see if I can go back. There's also an upload later option. So that will save it, and then you can upload it later when you do have access to data. And then after you've submitted it, you can go back and review that session and look at what you've done, as well as this is also accessible on our website. Alrighty, so a couple quick notes on getting the app to actually work correctly in your phone. There's a couple of things you need to do in the settings. So the first is, because this app is recording live geospatial data, you'll need to allow it to access location. I recommend allowing it to access your precise location, or in Android, I believe this is called high accuracy location. So this again just allows for the most robust data. And also you can allow it to access photos if you'd like to upload photos of what you're doing while you're tracking. And then finally, I wanted to share the project feature, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, but basically this is a new feature that we're adding in the new version. So in addition to these custom litter lists that we have, which we're developing one for MRCTI, we're also creating the option to create projects within the app. So basically this is just another way to aggregate user data. So if you are an organization who's encouraging people to clean up and you want to keep track of your contribution to the broader MRCTI project, or if you're organizing a cleanup and want to keep track of how much data that is collecting, you can use this feature to add a project. You'll see there's an option for a project icon, a project name, a project description, and then users, when they are on the MRCTI list, can go to select project and they'll be able to search for your projects and associate their data with your project. Okay, so jumping into data collection. So like I mentioned, the app is collecting this real-time geospatial data. So it's very point-specific data of what each individual item looks like. And so in order to do that, it really requires real-time tracking as well to get that level of data accuracy. So our gold standard is to track in pairs, where if you do want to clean up, you're having one person track and one person clean up so that the data is as accurate as possible. However, that's really difficult sometimes. So there's also the option to record all of the data in a particular area and then conduct a cleanup. And then also you can track aggregated tracking on location. Again, the app is recording your location. So if you do a cleanup of, say, a park or some other area, you want to collect all that data and then record it in the app on site. It'll all be in one point in the park, but at least it'll be near the location of where that was collected. And I do want to reiterate with this that we do not require you to collect, to clean up the litter items as part of this initiative. Of course, that's highly encouraged if you're able to, but safety is a top priority. So to participate in the initiative, all you have to do is track data in the app. The cleanup part is completely optional. But so In addition to those options that are the live geospatial data, we also have an option for manually uploaded data. So for some folks, you might be conducting a cleanup and then taking your items back and sorting them off-site. So this is an option to upload that type of data. So let me flip over to our website and I will show you what that looks like. All right, so first I'll show you really quickly. This is just some of the data that we're getting in already on the MRCTI list. So I wanted to just show you kind of what that geospatial data distribution looks like. Again, this data is really high quality, so it allows us to be able to look at very specific things that are influencing litter because we have those very point-specific locations. But there's also the option to manually upload data. So when you're logged in on the website, this is the same login you can use on the app. You can click this manually upload. So I'm going to search for the MRCTI list and we'll select that. And then it works very similarly to the app. So enter your total and then you can search for whatever item it was. And then when you click add, you'll see it added to your list down here. So yeah, fairly straightforward. The main difference is that once you're done with adding the items, you can go in and select your cleanup location. So we can also, you can search for where you actually found those. It'll take you to the city and then you can scroll in and pick your, point specific location of where that was found. And then this also allows you to name the collection event and backdate it. So if you're logging this after the fact, you can go in and add the actual date that you collected it, and then you can submit it to MRCTI. And all of this data goes to our same publicly accessible open database. It'll just be flagged as aggregated cleanup data instead of that point-specific data, but it's still super valuable and really important for understanding the problem of plastic pollution along the river. Alrighty, let me flip back over. Okay, so a few other things. So again, a lot of this information is in our field guide online, but I wanted to just run through a few other guidelines for tracking litter. We're asking that people record items that are over 1 inch in diameter. So this is not microplastics. You don't have to look for really tiny fragments. And then the second important point is that if the item was fragmented, but you can tell what it originally was, to log it as the original item. So for example, if you have a piece of a food wrapper, but you can tell it was a plastic food wrapper, go ahead and log it as a food wrapper instead of as a fragment. This is helpful because it helps us to understand, again, that upstream of what those sources of litter are, rather than just saying how many fragments are in the environment. And we already talked about brand, other, and the survey. And then the last thing to flag is just that we'd love to hear what you're doing and tag us on social media so that we can see what you're tracking and where you're finding litter. Alrighty, so now we're going to jump into our surveying protocols for this project in particular. So first, I'm gonna hop back over to our map. Okay, so this is just one example. These maps exist for all the cities and they can be found in our field guide. But basically what we've done is isolated urban area that's adjacent to the river. And then we've randomly selected sampling sites in that urban area and are asking people to go out and collect litter data in those areas. So again, these are randomly selected areas. These maps are still evolving as we're getting feedback from organizations on, what areas are safe, what other areas we need to include. So you'll see these maps updated. And then once the initiative officially kicks off on April 1st, through that April 1st to April 25th data collection period, you'll see these maps being updated. So as we're getting data in, we'll gray out areas that are completed. And so we'll have those you'll see kind of a live feedback of where we need additional data to be able to characterize this urban area adjacent to the river, which again helps us understand the source of litter. Alrighty, so flipping back here to our PowerPoint. So what does litter data collection actually look like on the ground in those spots? So basically what we're asking is people to find an area where litter typically accumulates. This may be along a roadside or a hiking trail, a pathway, a sidewalk. So the spots where you might typically walk your dog, where litter tends to accumulate and to the side of those areas. So find an area like that and then track in an area that is 1 meter wide, so 1 meter or about 3 feet, which is about the length of your outstretched fingertips to the center of your chest. So track that and then continue following that path for 30 minutes. And that's a minimum. You can track more if you want, but for at least 30 minutes, track everything you see within that pathway. So it's really quite simple. And if you can't make it to one of the sampling areas in the map, you can still follow this protocol of tracking along a pathway, even in your own neighborhood. So this allows us to compare densities between different sites and really get an idea of what's causing different areas to have different areas of litter input, and really look at density and compare those different sites. We also have the option to track floating debris. So in addition to looking at this input from society, what's coming in from our communities, we also want to look at what's entering the river. So in each map, we've created observation points for each city. So you can go to those observation points along the river and just log everything you see for 15 minutes. It's pretty simple. And then finally, accumulation sites. So again, we realize that for a lot of places that are more dense or that people are conducting, bigger cleanup events, it can be really difficult to track each individual item live while you're collecting data. And while that doesn't allow us to get the same geospatial granularity, we can still identify really important big trends of what's happening. So for example, this is a site off the coast of Belize where we've had people tracking, and they're identifying lots of fragments. You can see here lots of small fragments in the coastline. So they're not able to track each individual item, but because they're still aggregating that data and submitting it, we're still able to see the big patterns of what's happening there. So again, if you can't track, we talked about the ways that you can submit this bulk accumulation site data rather than tracking each individual item on the ground. And finally, I will also refer everyone to the field guide again for our recommendations on staying safe while tracking litter. Like I mentioned earlier, picking up items is not a requirement, although it is encouraged, but safety is the #1 priority. And then finally, I wanted to just take a look here and show you guys, this is the data that was collected in 2020 along the Mississippi River in Debris Tracker. So you can see it's really quite limited. We really don't have a good understanding of how these rivers are serving as conduits for feeding plastic pollution to the ocean. And this upstream data is really important in helping us understand that bigger picture. And so we're really excited to work with a lot of really amazing local organizations and motivated citizen scientists to collect this kind of data and to be able to understand what's causing it and then to look for solutions. And finally, I will leave my contact info, our social media handles, and our debris tracker contact info is here if there are any additional questions. But I'll go ahead and stop there and we'll take some time for Q&A at this point.
Yeah, we have a few, Catherine, that I've typed some answers to, but I think it would be nice to verbally answer them as well, just so that make sure everybody's heard. So the first question was, when is the new app going to be available? And I did say that because of approval within the app stores, we don't know the exact date as of right now, but for sure by the start of this. But I don't know if you have any more insight right now.
Yes, we can guarantee it will be live by the end of March, but I'm hoping it will be live very soon. We're waiting on approvals to go through in the App Store now, so should be very, very soon.
Yep, great. And then another question, just wanted to confirm that we're not only tracking plastic debris, but we're tracking all litter because we want to know what % of total litter is plastic.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I definitely recommend before you go out in the field, looking through the MRCTI list and just seeing the items that are on there. There is a pretty wide variety because people see a lot of different kinds of litter items on the ground, and it is plastic tends to come away as high, definitely the highest percentage of what we're seeing, but that's an important distinction to be able to make and to be able to back up that claim with actual numbers of what that percentage is.
Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned about an inch in size, which is kind of what we know is kind of visible from standing up. But I know somebody said cigarette butts can be, smaller than an inch. Do we still want those logged? And I said yes. But if you want to kind of clarify a little bit on that size.
Yeah, count, really the 2.5 centimeters, about an inch in diameter, is a guideline for visible debris. So really, we just don't want people to have to, be on their hands and knees counting teeny tiny fragments, but visible debris is really the guideline there.
Yep, exactly. And then, the project, can you clarify, do you create projects in the app itself or online before you?
Yes, right now we have the project creation tool in the app. We'll work on some additional website updates, but this is kind of coming in phases, and the first thing will be that it'll be available through the app itself.
That's great. And then I just want to clarify also that people had question about rural tracking, and I just wanted to assure everyone that the app works entirely offline. Once you have downloaded it and opened it at least once, it's completely offline. We've used it in very remote places all over the world, as well as the middle of the ocean. So you do not need to be connected to the internet, which is one really great sort of advantage of this. But then to upload the data, you do either need to have your data turned on and have a place where you have signal, or just go back to Wi-Fi, which is what we've often had to do in some of the remote areas where we've tracked, like along the Ganges in India and Bangladesh. What else did I miss here?
I see another question about collecting trash that as a stretch of waterway that's not the Mississippi, they can track like they would along a pathway. And the answer is yes. This is a protocol we've developed that we're hoping works in a lot of different contexts. So this is definitely applicable outside of the Mississippi as well. And for the analysis of the report, we're looking very specifically at these 3 pilot cities in particular, but we're also going to pull data from the entire basin, which, as you're aware, is very large. So the Mississippi River Basin covers a huge percentage of the country. So yes, we definitely want data that's not just from directly along the Mississippi River, and you can use the same protocol.
So questions, a couple questions about the maps that are directing people to places. One question is, are they in the app? And then the other question is, where can they see them? So people are on the lookout now if you want to direct.
Yeah, so the maps are not on the app. We've created them on Google Maps so that they're easy for people to find and see and view online. And I will drop the link to our field guide in,
in the chat. Oh, I did.
Chat, yes.
Yeah, I did that at first when you started speaking, but definitely you can put it again.
I will put it in there again. But yeah, in the field guide, there are links to, there's a unique map for each city. And we've created them in Google Maps because, frankly, we don't have quite the technological level of advancement to be able to create them in the app yet, although maybe that is a goal for the future. But right now they're housed in Google Maps and they're linked in our field guide for each city. I can also try to drop individual links for each map in the chat as well so that you can see them. And again, if you have suggestions for those, feel free to reach out to us about them. We're still adapting them. But the goal is to really look at urban areas that intersect with the river in those pilot cities. And if you're not in those urban areas, you can still follow this methodology and collect data that's still really valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you should be able to open them on your phone, so you still can navigate to the location that you want to start, mobily, but they're not directly within the app. So you'd have to open up your Maps app on your phone as well. So question from Mark Benfield, for the observations of floating debris, should we have people take pictures of the items as they're drifting by and upload them?
We're not requiring that, but we certainly encourage photos always. It's always helpful to have additional validation. So yeah, you don't have to, but we would love photos if you are able to take them. I know at some points the floating debris will likely be pretty far away and might be difficult to photograph, which is why we've left it as you can just tag it. But we certainly welcome any photo submissions.
Yep, I agree. All right, so yeah, we will continue to drop the links to the maps within the chat. And if anyone is here from Baton Rouge, maybe identify yourself in the chat. Amy Pan is looking for people who are here from Baton Rouge. Okay, so far I think that's it for questions, but we're gonna circle back at the end to answer any further questions from anybody else that's here. Catherine, do you wanna introduce our speakers?
Alrighty, great. First, we're going to hear from St. Paul. All right, and we have Trisha who's the volunteer coordinator with the City of St. Paul for the Parks and Recreation Department. So I'll let you take it away, Trisha.
Sure. Hi, good morning. Talking to you here from nice snowy Minnesota. You'll probably hear my accent. I'll try to keep the O's to a minimum. But as Catherine was saying, I work for the Department of Parks and Recreation within St. Paul, Minnesota. And so my role within that is to coordinate volunteer groups to come out into our parks to do anything from enhancing our natural areas to picking up litter, which then will again contribute to the positive enhancement of our natural areas within our regional parks. I think Minnesota, we are pretty fortunate to have a lot of great water, great trees, great parks, great, forests, everything of the above. So we have a lot of really dedicated people that want to come out and collect. So kind of some things that we have learned about from our cleanups is that in the St. Paul area, especially now when spring is starting to come, people just want to get out in force and they want to help. And so one way to do that is they see litter that is on the ground and they want to pick it up. So within our park system, they can either work with myself or I kind of have a cohort that works within Public Works, and we can organize, distribute bags and sometimes pickers and sometimes gloves to help pick up that litter. And then we also coordinate the pickup of those items so they can leave bags and full bags of trash in our parks or on our right-of-ways for our Public Works or park maintenance crews to pick up. So it's something that is easy that we have found as well, that it's very family friendly, and then also is good for all abilities, right? It can be someone, we have a really dedicated volunteer that has walkers that they just go out and pick up. If it's even 5 minutes, they do it. They have the difficulty sometimes of using phones, but they still get out there and they document kind of the work that they do. So, and kids really seem to love it as well. It's a great time. Get out in the spring, you're finally wearing shorts and a t-shirt and you just get out there and pick up trash. So that is awesome. And for us, we bring a lot of our rec center youth and other people to our parks because sometimes it's their first time ever being there. Right? They just want to explore the city. They don't really know what to do. And so if we can coordinate those groups to come in, teach them a little bit about the park, show them what they can do in the park, and then do a service component, that has seemed to be very helpful as well. Just kind of getting them engaged in our park, slow steps, and then hopefully they'll come back out and use it for their just kind of recreational use throughout the year. As far as what we've seen with people and wanting data, they like something that is tangible. That's why I think the app is really nice, is that they can see their, what they have done really quickly. So they can document it, they can track it, they know that they've made that impact, as well as then they'll see that full bag of trash afterwards. as well. And I think that has been very beneficial for a lot of our volunteer groups, and especially the kids, right? They love seeing like the really tall, small stuff, like you said, the cigarette butts and stuff. And they can just see kind of the impact that they've made. And then that goes along with education, right? It's kind of teaching them the impacts and how they can carry this on into their daily lives. And they can show that the government agencies they do care about the environment, and they are making steps towards making like a really great future for kind of those next generations that are coming. So yeah, we love kind of our community science people and those people that want to get out there and track app. I mean, besides this one, we have like birds, you have all plants, you have all everything. So I think it's a great benefit to have litter, because that is essential kind of up in our community. Yeah.
Thank you, Tricia. That's awesome. It's really a great point to highlight how that these kind of initiatives are really improved by having a big variety of people involved. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, now we're going to move downriver to St. Louis with Brian from the St. Louis Regional Stream Team.
Good day, everyone. Of course, I'm Brian Waldrop with the Missouri Stream Team program. Let me give a little update about what the Missouri Stream Team is, and then we'll go from there. So back in 1989, there was some fly fisher men and women that got tired of losing their flies when they were fly fishing for trout down in the creek in the southwest part of Missouri, and they started cleaning the creek. The Conservation Department and some other state agencies took notice of this and thought this would be a great volunteer program to enact, to start up throughout the state. So our three sponsors is the Conservation Federation of Missouri, the Missouri Department of Conservation, and Missouri's Department of Natural Resources. We have currently 6,218 teams. Now, each team can consist of one up to many hundreds per team. So that tells you the number of volunteers we have across Missouri. There is currently active of 4,900 teams. The activities since the beginning, we are 90,500 activities put on, and those are cleanups and all the different types of activities we have. The hours put in by all of our volunteers have been 3,226,550.24 hours put in, volunteer hours. Presentations, over 10,000 presentations Missouri Stream Teamers have done across the state, and that could be education, educational based, or advocacy, or stewardship based. It's all inclusive. We've planted 372,000 trees over the last 32 years. Storm drain stenciling, we've done over 20,000. The tons of trash we've removed from the beginning is 13,300 tons of trash. And we're averaging about 300 tons a year. Except for last year was only 200 tons, only 200 tons. And the water quality monitoring trips, because we train our volunteers in citizen science water quality monitoring. And we've had 33,000 water quality monitoring trips. This app has been such a blessing to work with. I see a lot of work that we could do with the app throughout Missouri, especially on the pre-planning of the cleanups, so we can track our, where all the trash is before we send the volunteers out. I've been using it for about a month now, and I've become really quick at using this app. It's kind of fun, and I'm looking forward to the update. But if you are in the St. Louis area and have looked at the Missouri Marine Trash Tracker, debris tracker, and you look at the people that are entering it, you do see a lot of stream teams entering all this trash. Over the last, I started a little bit after 1993 picking up trash after the Great Flood of '93, and I've seen a lot of things come and go. And right now the incoming is the single shot liquor bottles. So I've been definitely noting the name brands of those liquor bottles and a lot of light bulbs and a lot of TVs. The old big tubed TVs have been incoming because as policy change and everything else, the tube TVs now you have to pay to get rid of. Usually you go to a recycling center and they want the precious metals out of it, and so you could just give it to them. But now they're wanting $30 or $50. But it's funny how trash brings us all together. Because once it leaves whoever's hand, it's all of our trash. And I would have never met all of you if it wasn't for trash. So, okay, I digress.
Thank you, Brian. That was great. My favorite thing about this project is that it's bringing together so many organizations that are already doing really important and amazing work. So thank you so much for sharing. And finally, we're going to move down to our final pilot city in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and hear from Amanda with the Breck Natural Resource Management Division. Amanda, I think you're muted.
Oh, there I am. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Yep, hello from Baton Rouge. We are already in the 80s down here, so I apologize for those of you guys still dealing with snow. We are not ready for our summer temperatures, but they are certainly here for us. I am going to share my screen. I just have a couple little slides I wanted to show you guys. The first is an overview map of our parish. So this is East Baton Rouge Parish, and just to kind of give you a scale of just the water that we deal with. And so for us, litter and water goes hand in hand because that's how it moves. And so if you're from the Baton Rouge area, this should look pretty familiar to you, but not only is it going to the Mississippi River, but it's also going to our other major rivers, which still ultimately end up in the Gulf. And so one way or another, the water is moving, and you can kind of see here just the sheer scale that we're dealing with, all the interconnectivity, and all of the green are all of our parks. So I work for the Baton Rouge Recreation and Park Division, and we have around 180 parks throughout the parish, which is over 6,000 acres. My division manages over 3,000 acres alone. And so it's a lot of land, and our parks, as you can see, are intertwined with all these waterways. And so ultimately they end up as destinations for the litter in the system. Let me see if I can, there we go. So when I first moved here, I'm originally from Ohio, and when I first moved to Louisiana and we had our first big rain and the streets flooded, I thought I was going to die, but that's the norm down here. And so the picture on the left is just kind of your standard rain event. This is not an unusual amount of water by any means, and all of that water just picks everything up that's on the ground. So we get a lot of debris from the way that our trash is picked up. It gets blown out of or dropped out of the trash cans when it's picked up from the trucks. We have a lot of debris from highways and roadways that blow out of the back of people's trucks. And then we just have, a lot of blown debris around that ultimately then gets picked up by the water. And so all of these end up somewhere. And so what most people see is just a small amount of litter, on the side of the road, at storm drain gates. And then they start to see it in our parks. And so the picture on the right is one of our parks that we did a focus on watersheds and litter removal up in the Baker area. And when we did that project, we went into schools and tried to teach kids about how water systems work. And what we were finding is that they honestly don't even really understand how interconnected everything is, and how something that they do in their yard will ultimately impact the park that's downstream from them. So that's been a big focus, and our programming staff works hard on the education piece because ultimately, what we end up with is this in our local rivers. So this is Bayou Manchac, which is right by one of our parks, and this is one of our scenic overlooks. And so it just builds up, and it's just little things, and people don't really think about it. And, you know, this is probably something that everybody understands, but how to deal with it has been something that has come up in conversation recently. And, you know, we can't just put a boom out because we don't have the staffing and capacity to just go out and collect that trash constantly. So, you know, how do you treat the problem and not just the symptoms? We approach it from a lot of different angles. So there's a paddling group in town, Paddle VR. They're great. They go out and do cleanups, and we've actually kind of welcomed them into our volunteer program. And so now they're Green Force volunteers. And our Green Force program, you know, we have almost 100 volunteers that go out and work and do conservation work for us, which is really helpful. And part of that is cleaning up trash. We have not started using the litter app yet, but we do a lot of citizen science stuff with our iNaturalist app. And so it's really effective. And, you know, like someone else said, they love to see the work that they've done. So them being able to go in and see the locations of the trash that they picked up is excellent. And so everybody wants to feel like they've done something really important. And so with all of our volunteer projects, we make sure that we don't just like go out and just do it right away. Even if it's just like 2 to 3 minutes beforehand of giving a little brief overview of why it's important, and educating them on where some of this trash might have come from and how it got there is crucial to the success of it, so that everybody leaves at the end of the day feeling like they made an impact, because it's very overwhelming, especially down here when you just see the sheer scale. This instance isn't even that bad of an area, to be honest, compared to some of the other ones that we have. So as a whole, I would just say, you know, it's an uphill battle, but I'm excited about the data that is going to be collected by this, because it could help us to get the funding that we need to do more large scale solutions that are really needed down here in our local waterways.
Thank you, Amanda. I think that really highlighted how connected our community is and where litter is coming from with the waterways that we're surrounded by. So super interesting to hear what's happening in Baton Rouge. And thank you to all our panelists for helping us get this kind of whole river perspective of what litter looks like in these different pilot sites along the river.
I think we could have, if there are any more questions related to the app or the project, feel free to ask, or if you have city or, you know, locality questions, I think Amanda, Brian, and Tricia can take some. I have one sort of comment / question, I think, for Brian, but any of the panelists as well. So Brian, I mean, you started off giving all kinds of metrics, which of course, as a researcher, I absolutely loved. I mean, your numbers are incredible. How many, you know, over 6,000 teams, you know, over 4,000 active teams, anywhere from 1 to 100, 90,000, you know, at over 90,000 activities. Anyway, do you find that your volunteers react to those kinds of numbers? I mean, like, you know, as I said, I'm a researcher, so I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And, you know, thinking about then, and I think you clearly have sort of embraced the app, right? Because there's all these metrics and, you know, oh my goodness, now you know exactly what team members are doing what and where it's being collected and over time. Do you find in general that your volunteers are motivated by those kinds of metrics, or, you know, how do you kind of use those internally? And then also, after you answer, if Amanda or Tricia have any thoughts on that as well, in terms of metrics motivating folks?
Let's see here. So it depends. So we have different volunteers that like different things. So some volunteers only want to do water quality monitoring and a little light litter pickups. So, you know, the parks and the side tributaries, you know, that run through urban areas. But then we got this hardcore crew that likes to go out and tackle the untouched areas where we don't know what we're getting into, and it requires multiple dumpsters, and, you know, it's a week-long project and stuff like that. So it all depends on the situation. You know, we got people who are teams that are strictly large rivers, like they only work on the Missouri and all the large tributaries coming in it, and on the Mississippi, like the Living Lands and Waters. And then there's a lot of crews that are out there that are only in canoes doing these cleanups. And You know, we see there's a crew out there that really likes to get the tires. And I have to brag, but between a buddy and myself, we're up a little over 100,000 tires in the last 29 years.
Wow.
And so it all depends on what we like to do. And when new things start to pop up, we get excited. Not that there's new litter out there, but we found something new. You know, and when you find that strange thing, like I just found a mannequin body. And so now she sits in my back of the truck with a mask on and a hat, and I'm driving down the highway and people are giving me strange looks, and I forget she's back there. And then, you know, one of her trailers has all the baby dolls strapped to it. It brings attention to the trash. It gets us connected with people who are not familiar with how much trash is out there. And, you know, each volunteer has their own little niche on what they want to do. You know, so
I think you're right, spreading awareness, you know,
Yeah.
through what you find. And I loved your story about the TV. So like you said, we don't obviously, you know, want to see litter, but then the way you said, you know, we have basically our litter is representative of what we're using and or,
At
you
the
know, and
time.
what we're throwing away and what we're, you know, so like Debris Tracker was able to pick up monitoring PPE within about a week or a couple days of people starting to use masks and gloves. We started to see them reported, you know, through the app globally. And so I think that just becomes really interesting. But then your clues on why, you know, why are TVs increasing? Well, now it costs to get rid of them. And so that kind of being able to take that as evidence, basically the data is evidence, and then figure out, you know, what's happening upstream. And I think to Amanda's point, to then prevent it, you know, from getting there. Does there need to be like a day that people could drop off TVs for free, or, you know, something like that? How can we, I mean, the tires too, like how can we try to keep those, you know, out? I think those cost to dispose of as well.
Well, let's
So-
talk about tires for a second, because I know all the way up in St. Paul, all the way down to the Gulf, we have a tire issue. When I forget, was it Amanda or I forgot who was down in Baton Rouge?
That's Amanda.
There was a tire in the picture. So St. Louis region is lucky enough to have a tire dealership. They have 41 stores that saw the problems that stream teamers were always trying to get these tires recycled. It was costing us money to get the tires recycled. He has stepped up, and if you are a stream teamer and have your little stream team card, you can take the tires now for free to his shops and drop them off. So, you know, just if you can bring awareness to corporations and everything else, more than likely they'll step up and start helping out, because they like to fish, they like the boat, they like to paddle, but they don't want to see the tires. And yeah, and then, you know, so I'm here in St. Louis and I travel across Missouri in the Midwest. A lot of things that I'm traveling for is to pick up trash, and at least to find trash pockets. I also live in South America, in Guyana, and it's the same down there. And with you guys going out to the Ganges, it's the same there, just different trash. And so, well, I would like to see this trash app and resolution on how to solve the problem, you know. But one thing is we are addressing the problem, but it's the recycling and where do we take the trash? How can people get rid of the trash and it stays in that area so it doesn't blow away? Or the trash trucks that are driving down the street and it's blowing out of the top of their trucks. So there's still answers to be, or questions
A lot
to
of
be
good,
answered.
discussion points. Yeah.
It's very hard to come up with a legit answer. And, you know, when we did really push here in Missouri about plastics, the lobbyists didn't want us to have plastic bags removed, you know, from a couple cities. So, you know, it's going to be an uphill battle. I'm ready for the fight. That's what I do for a living, is trash, protecting our streams and everything. I went back to school because of trash and water quality. So
it's great to hear your passion and your drive, for sure.
I love what I do, and I love this. I cannot believe that this walked into my life, this project, and I'm ready.
Great.
So,
Great. I wanted to, yeah, I mean, we're ready for you. The database is there and ready to take all the data. I know you've been addressing a few questions in the chat, Catherine. Is there anything you want to also bring up verbally to talk about?
Yeah, that's a great point. I also just wanted to say really quickly, I think another thing that's really exciting about this project is having the mayors on board and having those local decision makers ready to be receptive to this data. So I think that makes it extra impactful. A couple quick questions we got in the chat about the app that I just wanted to flag. One is that there's gray areas on the sampling maps. Those are areas that were randomly selected when we ran this algorithm method of finding sites, but that we've identified as unsafe. I got another question about if you know that one of the sampling areas isn't accessible or it is unsafe, what to do about that. And so I'm dropping my email in the chat as well. So feel free to shoot me an email if there's something that needs to change in one of those sampling maps that you're aware of. This is all, we're doing this from far away without lots of knowledge of the local context. So we definitely really appreciate input there. I did have a question for Amanda and Tricia in our last couple of minutes here. I wondered, you both talked about other citizen science projects that you've gotten volunteers engaged in both of your respective communities. And I'm wondering if you could speak to how you've seen community science impact people's, education or awareness or engagement in these different issues, and kind of what you're excited about with getting people involved in citizen science around plastic pollution. I don't know if one of you.
I guess I can weigh in real fast. So we use the iNaturalist really heavily, and people have really gotten behind it. It took a couple years to kind of get some general awareness out there, but we now have a project that pulls all the species from every single park in the system and turns it into our GIS geodatabase. And I think the biggest thing is that it just gives people an idea of scale and kind of a sense of unity. It levels the playing field a little bit, and it allows people to feel like they are doing just as much good as the staff and the scientists that are out there. And so I think that alone is huge, just that it empowers people. But then, with the species, it's really cool because, you can get tallies and people can see and they can kind of compete with each other and whatnot. But for the trash, I'm really hoping that people get a better sense of just the sheer scale and just really kind of understanding that, it's everywhere and that it's in their neighborhood and then also in their parks and, getting that sense of, if it's in this location, it's going to be in this location soon. And so hopefully it has that effect on people.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'll say for our community, so we call it community science. We have found the word citizen sometimes derails people a little bit. So I will refer to it as community scientists. For us, it's been really useful because we also work really closely with the U of M, and when I say U of M, University of Minnesota, and a lot of the research and work that they do there as well. And so iNaturalist, as Amanda had said, is kind of our big point, or big app that we have used in the past. And really for us, it's getting those educators and school groups to come in and show them that they have a tool that they can use, and then they can take it home, right? Practice with their family when they're out in a park. They can say, oh, I know this bird, or I know this bug, or I know this, plant species. We've seen a lot more engagement and interest when we host those volunteer groups, right? Because when we're hosting those groups in, even, I say even, but that's not the right word, as they're coming in to pick up litter, right? They can still do iNaturalist work, and there still can be an education component to it. As far as with the data for the litter component, I think for us, it's going to bring everyone on the same playing field, right? We have so many different organizations working with our watershed districts, to National Park Service, to a lot of other nonprofits that work along the Mississippi. Like Amanda was showing those flooding pictures, it brings back, we get flooded just as much, I think, as anyone. And I used to live up in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and they flood as well. And it's just shocking to see that water dispersed over so much land. And then understanding that trash is also in that water. And so for us, it's just kind of brings that visual to it. It's like, here's just something tangible. Here's what you're doing when you're picking it up, and here's the impact you're making. And yeah, I hope, does that kind of answer your question a little bit?
No, that was perfect. I love both of your insights on, bringing the community together to really empower people with data, and also bringing in that education component. So thank you very much. I think we are officially just about out of time, so I'll turn it over to Jenna for some final remarks.
Sure. Yeah, we're out of time, and thanks so much for sharing, Amanda and Tricia. National Geographic works with iNaturalist, and it was a really good fit to work with them for Debris Tracker. And you're right, the data, working with both apps is, it's kind of a natural fit for that. So that's worked well to expand our reach as well. Yeah, thanks to everyone for attending this webinar. This will be recorded and posted on the unep.org/Mississippi website. There are 2 more webinars coming up. So they're listed on the website for their dates as well. And yeah, just thanks to our panelists, Brian, Tricia, and Amanda. Really appreciate the local perspective and enthusiasm for this project. Continue to reach out to Catherine and I with questions, and we're really excited to work with everyone on this project. Thanks so much. Bye.